Hey there, this is Audrey of the Maiden Voyage podcast, and you're listening to episode 10, season 1, the one where we interview author Jennifer Michael. Hey.
Maiden Voyage is a podcast recorded by the women of Impulse Creative.
Audrey, Rachel, Jen,
Danielle,
Courtney,
Jackie.
We're CEOs, salespeople, project managers, writers, and marketers.
We're also wives, rad moms, remote employees all over the country, in-house staff, empowered single ladies, and all-around ass kickers.
There's a lot of challenges we face, overcome, and share
that make our voyage different than those of the men we work with. This is our journey.
Today we're talking to author Jennifer Michael, and more importantly, my best friend.
Hi.
So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an indie book author. I write in the romance genre. I grew up here in Florida, and indie means is I am independently published. So I am my boss, creator. I'm in charge of my books, my brand, and everything like that. There's no publishing house behind me.
So explain to me a little bit more about the kind of books you write. You said that you're in the romance.
Yeah, so everything I write is in the romance genre. My branding is sweet and sultry to dark and daring. So what that means is I don't like to stay within one subgenre of romance. So I tend to lean more towards suspense, edgier, darker books. But I do write outside of that. I write more traditional romances, contemporary traditional romances. And then as well as I'm writing a romantic comedy right now. So I do, I stay within romance, but I jump around within subgenres.
I realized that there were like subgenres in the romance section. I'm like a closet romance book junkie. I will read them all day on my phone because I feel like if I'm out in public, I feel like I'm a little embarrassed at times, but I'm totally a closet junkie. I hadn't realized that there were different subcategories. Could you maybe explain what's the fine line difference?
There's a whole bunch of rules of what kind of categorizes things. I can't really go into all the rules because I don't know them, but most of the time genres are from the book distributors. And so you want to categorize your book within the closest genre so that the readers know what type of book they're looking for. Outside of that, it can go even farther, and they have things that are what are called tropes and stuff like that. And it's kind of like a theme or type of book within the genres.
Okay. It gets heavy. Okay.
When did you start writing?
I've always written. I've written short stories since I was little. When I'm emotional or if I'm trying to work through something, I write poetry, which is kind of something that I just do for myself. And then as for the romance books, it was probably 5 years ago, and I was in college and I was broke. And I was looking for free books to read, and I happened to see that a bunch of the free books that were being offered were in the romance genre. So if you know me, like my best friend does, I'm not someone outside of these books that you would think would write romance books. I'm not the hopeless romantic, and I intended to download this book and pretty much laugh at it. That was what I was going to do. I was like, this is free. I'll read it. It'll be funny. I'll mock it the whole way through. Well, that didn't happen. And I absolutely fell in love with the books. There's just such strong emotions and strong characters and storylines. And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I just thought it was going to be this cheesy story that always ended the same way, or
a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, kind of I mean, and I do like Hallmark.
Nicholas Sparks, you can always count on him to know exactly. It's always going to end well. You know, like a Hallmark movie. It's the good-looking guy from the small town is always stealing your girl, no matter.
or the crazy ex is always, you know, turning into a stalker, you know, or something.
Right. Yeah.
For a lifetime
You're
at
gonna
Hallmark. But
From the very beginning, you're like, this chick's gonna die for sure.
It's like Nicholas Sparks.
so I fell in love, and then you know, when you're watching your favorite television show and you and your friend both watch it, and after you watch the show, you guys text each other and you're like, oh my God, did you just see what happened? Like, I can't believe that. So I was reading all these books, and I didn't have anyone that was also reading them. I didn't know anyone that was reading romance, and I went online because I was reading these books, and I'm like, oh my God, I need someone to talk to about this. And I went online and I saw that, especially on Facebook, but within all sorts of social media, there was a huge world for these books. And I got on and I'm like, oh my God, I can talk to the authors. Oh my God, there's all these groups that are set up for genres of books, for one in particular book. Like, and I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. And I actually started into the romance world as a blogger. And I opened my own blog because I was like, well, how am I going to meet these people, you know, to talk books about and stuff. So I opened my own blog and I did that. And I learned a lot about the world that way. And I discovered that through the invention of e-readers and stuff, that publishing your own book became more of a realistic, attainable thing than like what little kids dream about doing. It was something that was more within grasp. So when I was becoming friends with other authors and saw like what their journey was like and saw that it was something that I could do, I was like, well, this is what I have to do. Like, this is what I always wanted to do. So I have to go for it. And I ended up eventually closing my blog and focusing full time on the writing.
How many books have you written?
I have written 8 books, and I've published 5.
Cool.
What's with holding the other 3 back?
I wrote a book when I was younger that was just, it was kind of like a journaling thing that ended up turning into a book. And it was just something for me, and it was before I had found that publishing was something I could do. So it was kind of like, I write when I'm emotional and stuff. So it was kind of just something to work through things. So there was that. And then another one that I wrote with the intention of being my first published book. And my computer crashed, like with 99% of it written.
Oh my God.
At the time, I thought it was the biggest tragedy that ever happened to me. But it ended up being a positive thing because it wasn't what I needed to release into the world. I actually still have like the broken hard drive, like sitting in a condition safe box. Because I wasn't ready to let it go, but it's probably not something that will ever see light. I have just kind of like another story like that. I mean, the hard drive didn't pass or anything, but it was kind of like a test book that, you know, didn't go anywhere. Maybe one day it will, but.
What's your favorite book you've written?
Probably Deeper.
Is that in the series that I'm reading?
It's not. This is Deeper.
It's a really pretty cover.
Are you going to send that copy to me, Audrey?
This is a completely standalone. It's darker than the series that you're reading.
Okay.
But it is a spin-off.
So I actually have a question about, I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought there, but about like the series versus the standalones.
Okay.
So like I, as a reader, love reading a series, and
Okay.
I don't know why, like I just love that the story continues. You know what I mean? Is it like, do you enjoy writing a series? Is it harder to write a series? Is it like, do you enjoy the series more than a standalone? Because like I said, as a reader, I love a series. Standalone books are great, don't get me wrong, but I tend to find authors that are series writers and kind of stick with them.
As a reader, I'm the same way as you, which before I started this, I thought that that was what I would do as a writer because that's how I read. And not to say that I won't ever do another series again, because I won't is a pretty definite
strong.
Something. I didn't love it. It's I loved writing the books and stuff, but there's a certain amount of pressure if it's within a series to get them out in a timely manner. So if I could switch around and not have to stay within that series in order writing it, I think I would.
You want to Star Wars it?
Well, or True Blood. I read the Suki Stackhouse series, and it would be like a year and a half in between books, almost too long that I'd have to go back and like read the end of the last book to be like, oh yeah, I know where we are.
I feel like it probably eliminates some spontaneity too, because if you have a really good idea for a standalone book while you're stuck in this trilogy or series, what do you do then?
And that's kind of what was happening to me.
She does do that.
But that was what was happening to me, and that's why, like, I kept wanting to go write deeper, and I was in the series. I'm like, I can't abandon it. Like, I this out.
Because you wrote these two first, and then you wrote Deeper Bold, and then the third, right?
Correct. Yeah. This is a 3-book series, and it was okay because the third book is kind of like a new storyline with new characters with the same characters in it. If you're reading it, the third book is Tegan's book.
Okay.
So the story does kind of end in the second book. So I did write 2 books in between going back to the third.
Okay.
And with doing it that way, it was okay. But I didn't like being stuck within one world for that long. And then I also made the mistake, because it was my first book, I didn't outline my first book. And which also meant that when I got to book 2, I didn't have all the tiny nuances written down. So when I'm trying to make sure that there's no inconsistencies in the story, I pretty much had to go back through and redo everything, because it was my first time doing this, and I didn't write down, like, even silly stuff that you would think everyone remembers, but you have so much going on in your head. You're like, what color was that character's eyes? Like, and you can't give them blue eyes in book 1 and green eyes in book 2.
Right, yeah. She can't go from wearing like cutoff shorts and Deceit and Bloom to wearing boxer like capri pants. Like, yeah, there has to be. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, and on that too, like at the end of Deceit and Bloom, you're like, oh my God, I need the second one like right now. And at the end of Vengeance, like you're like, okay, the story's over. And then another one pops up and you're like, whoa.
Well, with Deceit, and I won't give anything away because you're not there yet.
I'm not there yet.
But with Deceit, the way it formed was through that ending of Deceit. The book started with the end. So I knew that it was going to be a book that the second book would need to be out quickly. Because there's a lot of unanswered questions. So since Deceit,
there goes my weekend.
So since Deceit was my first published book, and I knew that, I actually wrote both books before publishing. And I did space them out to give myself a little time. It was only like a few months, but I wrote them to completion, before I published the first.
Okay, are any of these books based on personal experience, and who are the characters based on?
I mean, I think any writer will tell you that there's personal experiences in books. Sometimes it's silly stuff, like if you're from Fort Myers and stuff, you'll see a lot of similar names or mashup of names of things around here, or like the town name as a store name or something. The nurses in Vengeance are named Audrey and Jesse, which is Audrey and our other friend. So I do things like that. I do a lot of working in people in my lives, like names to the stories, and things that mean things to me, as like store names or stuff, or bar names or whatever it is, stuff like that. And then I think every book has pieces of me in it. Deeper probably has the most pieces of me. And then sometimes I do things where people that give me trouble in life, they may end up gone in a book. But, it's not really, the character is not them. Like, there's nothing about that character that is similar to them. I'll just give them a name, and then they're the same name, and then their time has to be over.
I love that. It's like wielding the sword with a pen. Isn't that a thing?
You never want to cross an author.
It reminds me of like Taylor Swift, like how she like, you never want to mess with Taylor Swift because you'll end up in her song. But like, I feel like yours is a lot more subtle. Like.
So there's things like that. I kind of write on themes, and most of the times the themes have to do with something in my life that I'm drawing from. So there's usually always scenes that have like true emotion from me or stuff like that. And sometimes, like, because these are themey books and stuff like that, like sometimes there's something that happens that may tip something off that starts everything. There's never anything that's like word for word based off, but that's how, when you write, that's where you get your inspiration from, is from your life.
What hurdles do you personally face writing, and how do you overcome them?
My biggest hurdle is time, because life happens all around you and you have to make time to get this stuff done. It's very easy to get distracted with social media or texting or whatever, and you could be on a deadline, to write 5,000 words that day, and then all of a sudden you've fallen down a Facebook hole and you haven't written in 2 hours. And then juggling my life with my day job and stuff like that, making the time for when I have to write, especially with the quickness in which you kind of need to publish to stay on those timelines. Time is my biggest hurdle, and making sure that I make time for what's important to me. And then the second hurdle, which I don't think that I would have changed anything about the way this happened, but I'm not trained in creative writing or in English, or anything like that. So there was a lot of learning experience, especially with my first book, where I really had to learn the technical stuff with grammar and punctuation and English, and even just the difference between a story and how to write that in a way where readers are going to be engaged. I got really, really lucky, and I couldn't have asked for a better editor. And through those first 2 books, she kind of sat with me and taught me tricks and the proper way to do things. And still to this day, she hammers rules into my head. And sometimes I make fun of her for it, but it's always something that I didn't have beforehand. And the way I learned it and the way I went about it, I don't think I would have changed it to have wanted to know beforehand, but it wasn't a tool that I had before. It was something that I had to learn along the way.
I found a trend in the women characters in at least the first book I'm reading, Deceit in Bloom, were like super strong-willed characters, really empowered, not only about like their sexuality, but like who they are and their backgrounds and, you know, where they came from. Just like, even though some of them have gone through some like terrible stuff early on, they were just very empowered women and owned their choices in life, which, like, being an all women group and it being, you know, Women's History Month, like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you kind of do that, and not make them the, if you will, like, lovesick damsel in distress you might think a romance novel carries as a lead character, because these chicks are not like that at all.
That's actually something that's really important to me. I do like to read books with strong women. I mean, I have a lot of strong women around me and stuff like that, so I do kind of base it off of people that I see, myself, and I feel like all of my characters are very strong women, but they're all different. Paisley is kind of more damaged and broken, but she's doing everything that she can, you know, to get ahead. Like, that part of her isn't affecting her strength to keep going and to be a woman. And then Noah, who's in Bold, is more that typical romance character, but she's not the damsel in distress. She's more the girly girl. She's more shy and everything like that, but she's still a badass woman. And Ryland's just a little deranged, but she's probably one of the strongest women in there. I mean, she has an extreme alpha in her story, and she gives him a run for his money the whole way through. Through life and outside of books, I really feel like women should have confidence in themselves to be able to own their sexuality, and be okay with their choices, their mistakes, and things like that. And you can be a strong woman and mess up. Like, it happens every day, and it's how you kind of overcome that and learn and everything. And I think that that's really important for today, for life, for books, for media, everything, you know, to make sure that all facets and all diversity of women, you know, are kind of shown in a good light.
Okay, so I know you do self-publishing, but what is that process like? How do you, like, I want to publish a book, what do I do?
Well, the process is going to be different for everyone. If you're looking to indie publish, first of all, you just have to write. That's the main part. Worry about the rest later. Depending on what you want to do, you can have a team of people behind you that are editors, proofers, cover designers, which I have all, and you can do that. I mean, or you can just do it all yourself, which some people do. My personal process is, when I get a story idea, I outline it. My outlines are a little different than maybe some other people's, because I don't like to pencil anything too detailed, because sometimes when I do that, my head gets stuck, because maybe the story is pulling me in a different way, but I'm like, no, this outline says this, like I have to stay there, like it's over in this outline. What does that matter? So I will kind of have directions, like, this is kind of what's happening in the middle, and it's going to, or this is what's happening in the beginning, and it's going to take us here for this reason, and then in the middle, this is where everything blows up in your face, and then this is why it's blowing up in your face, but they're not going to know that, and it's going to lead you here, and so that's kind of how I do it. And then I have a general kind of chapter outline, like, this is where they meet, like, the purpose of their meeting underlying, you know, needs to be this reason. And I will kind of do like broad chapter outlines in that way. After the self-edits, it's going to go to beta or alpha readers, which these are like a group of people who read it, depending on the author, they may ask their early reader to look for different things. I mainly ask them to look for inconsistencies or maybe a story that was part of the story that was slow for you, or maybe something you didn't understand. I have some beta readers that are amazing, and they've been with me on every book. So I really don't have to tell them much of anything anymore. I'm just like, here, let me know. And so then after they bring it back, then you're going to do another round of self-editing, fix anything that they've seen to get it ready to be in shape for your editor.
So now we're going to get a little deeper into the goodness of her books, and Jen is going to read an excerpt out of Deeper. Imagine that.
Okay, before I read the excerpt, a little bit about the books. This is my series. It is the Love Unauthorized series. It is Deceit in Bloom, Vengeance in Bloom, and Perdition. These books are available exclusively on Amazon, and they are available to read free in Kindle Unlimited. Bold is a contemporary romance full of emotion. It's a lot lighter and sweeter. Deeper is a dark romance. It comes with a warning label. Deeper is available. Deeper and Bold are both available on all major platforms. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. There's a new book distribution place called E10 Books. These books are both available for that, and that distributor is focused with a zero censorship and high diversity target towards the romance genre only. So I will read you the first chapter of Deeper. Debauchery, sex, lust, excess, forbidden secrets. This place overwhelms my senses, but Maplefield is a small town, and Utopia is the first of its kind in the area of Connecticut. For a small price, I gain admittance into the club, which wasn't as nearly as difficult as I thought it would be. Once my 1-week probationary period is over, I will get full-blown membership. Until then, a red lanyard hangs from my neck, telling everyone I'm off limits and only allowed to observe. 1 week never seemed so long before. First time here, a middle-aged woman with porcelain skin sits down at the stool next to me. Her eyes hold that same awestruck quality that I imagine matches my own. I return a genuine smile. Yeah, how about you? She plays with the lanyard around her own neck. I've been here a couple times this week, but my probation is almost over. Are you here alone? The guess to my own question is no. While the woman had no problem striking up a conversation with me, she seems a bit too shy to have come here without someone else. She points to a group of men across the room. That man in the blue polo is my husband. A few of his work buddies come here, and it's always fascinated us as a couple. We finally decided to check it out. Good for you. What about you? Are you here alone? I am. I don't think I would have been able to come here without my husband, she admits. The unknown, intimidating or different, doesn't give me anxiety. If anything, it pushes me. I left behind the last of my vanilla existence the second I walked through the door and signed my name on the dotted line. I need to continue pushing my boundaries, to discover experiences that curl my toes and paint my fantasies. According to the paperwork, this place will do just that, providing that my behavior here isn't illegal and is safe for all members, that is. Having sex in front of an audience? That's perfectly acceptable here. Mixing pain and pleasure? Yes, please. Giving control of my body to another? Permission granted. I've always been curious about sex. Porn became a part of my routine at a young age for a girl, and losing my virginity wasn't scary for me. It was thrilling, powerful. I'm not into BDSM culture, and I don't have any crazy fetishes, but I need excitement. There isn't much I would say no to until I at least try it once. I have a few hard limits, but I try to stay open. This is the place for me to continue pushing my limits. In the past, I've been with guys who liked routine and predictability, and it drove me mad. I was bored out of my mind. Some would balk if I suggested anything a little outside of the box, but others would try, which was almost worse. I'd end up with watered down versions of what I actually wanted because my exes were too timid or too unimaginative to give me what I needed. As a single woman, if I want more, then I need to go after it.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Wait, it's a sex club. The first chapter starts at a sex club. It's crazy. I love it. Thank you so much for reading a little bit for us.
You're welcome.
Oh my God, that was good. Okay, ready?
Beer, wine, or liquor?
Beer.
Briggs Myers personality type?
Architect.
I mean, that'll count. Okay. Hogwarts house?
What?
Hogwarts house.
Oh, Gryffindor.
What are you having for dinner?
Oh, probably cereal.
Favorite female celebrity?
Oh, pass.
Most recent book you read?
Probably something by Kelsey Ray.
Okay. Sparkling or still water?
Bill.
If you could time travel, what year would you travel to?
Pass.
Okay. Flats or heels?
Flats.
Biggest pet peeve?
Pass.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
What gets you into trouble?
Oh no. My mouth.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
That'll be it.
Every single guest we've had says that.
Their mouth.
Tune in next week when we dive into middle school, the best of times and the worst of times. Until then, stay your course. And remember, this is your voyage. Make it amazing.
Sadly, that'll do it for this week's episode of Maiden Voyage. We'd like to thank you, our amazing listeners, because let's face it, lady life is hard. It's incredible how much we accomplish every day, and we all deserve awards just for existing. If you're watching the show, make sure that you subscribe, click on that thing for instant notifications, speak your mind in the comments, and share us with your fellow Voyagers.